Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second webinar in the International Market Trends of the Be Resilient webinar cycle, where we will be exploring the major trends on the target countries that the Be Resilient project is working on. As you may know, Be Resilient is a European-funded project where we strive to make all food value chains more resilient through time, and so we really put at the center the upcycling of byproducts and other food waste in order to increment the value of said food. And so today we are delving into the international market trends that are affecting the targeted countries of the Be Resilient network. So the objective of this report and this webinar is to provide some valuable current insights into what's going on within the evolution of the trends in the upcycling movements globally. And so the information that is reflected mainly responds to the analysis in the context of new products activity and new consumer trends that are documented through various databases, as the Innova Market Insights database that we already covered in the previous webinar. We are also going to scan the target countries via some snapshots. As you may know, the Be Resilient network is striving to make an impact in the internationalization of our SMEs in the United States of America, Canada, China, Japan, Singapore, and South Korea, and Thailand. And so today we're going to be delving into these different countries to see what kind of market trends are going on in them, and so that we can better understand the systems and better introduce new products that are upcycled and that generate value in our European SMEs. So without further ado, we're going to start the studying of these Be Resilient target countries with these snapshots. I'm going to begin with the snapshot of the United States of America. As you may know, this is one of the largest countries that are being targeted by the Be Resilient network, with over 330 million inhabitants. As you may know, they don't have an official language, but English has acquired an official status in over 32 of the 50 states, although other languages such as Hawaiian is officially recognized in the state of Hawaii, but as well as other indigenous languages in Alaska. Other European languages are being widely spread and used in the country, such as Spanish. And so it is a thing that we have to take into account whenever we're exporting into the United States of America. They are a federal country, and that means that there are 50 states in one federal district with the District of Columbia, where the capital of the United States sits. And so it's interesting to take into account that the regulations of entry are harmonized, but we can also find some differences between different states as to what they're requiring and what the capacity of bureaucracy processing is. In terms of currency, they use the US dollar, which is the global referred currency. The exchange rate is fluctuating, but usually a euro makes about 1.1, 1.2, or 1.06 US dollars. As you may know, whenever we're delving into the United States of America, we have to take into account that there are 50 different realities, and that makes it a bit complex to analyze. So if we take into account the main business areas, they are mainly large urban clusters that are spread throughout the eastern half of the United States, especially around the Great Lakes area, the Northeast, the East, and the Southeast, as well as within the western tier of states. The main ports, which are especially important to take into account whenever we are exporting to the United States, are the Port of Los Angeles, the Port of New Jersey, New York, as well as Long Beach and Savannah. But other ports like the Port of Miami are growing in importance, not only because they are the gateway into a very dynamic and growing population, but also because of their proximity to other countries such as Mexico and the Caribbean nations that are incrementing their trade. As to airports, we have to take into account the Stevens Anchorage International Airport in Alaska, as well as the Memphis one, or Louisville Mohammed Ali International Airport. In this picture, we have to take into account the economic indicators with a GDP over $25 billion and a GDP growth that is steady at around a 2.1% growth rate, and a GDP per capita that is verging the $80,000 per capita. It is an economy that is very advanced, and that means that the service industry makes for over 80% of the GDP, whilst the industry makes around an 18.6%, and the agriculture is just a 1.1%. So that also gives us an idea of how the United States is distributing the sectoral and the economic growth, and where we can find some growth opportunities with our food and beverage exports. So it is very important to delve into this trade picture of the United States and their position in the world trade. The United States is, of course, the world's largest importer and the second largest exporter of goods, as well as the largest importer and exporter of commercial services. However, the trade only represents around 25% of the country's GDP, as the World Bank data is recording. We can see here this picture that shows how the world's largest traders of goods with the latest data updated by the trade map. The United States sits at around 1.97 billion euros, which is around 8%. And the second largest exporter of goods in the world is preceded only by China, with 3.4 billion, which is around 15%, and followed by Germany with 1.58 billion, or 7%, in the Netherlands and Japan. The United States with the 3.25 billion euros, which is a 13%, is the largest importer in the world, and is then followed by China with an 11% share, and Germany 6% share, and Japan 4% share. As you can see here, the trade among the largest trade of goods in 2022 is co-opted by the United States of America and China, which are switching between the first and second position in each figure. In this context, we have to take a look into the EU trade relations with the United States, as the European Union and the United States have the largest bilateral trade and investment relationship and have the most integrated economic relationship in the world. Although this has been overtaken by China as the largest trading partner, especially for goods, whenever services and investments are taken into account, the US is still the largest trading partner of the European Union. And we can see some relevant facts. For once, the bilateral trade and the investments for millions of jobs in the EU, as well as in the US. Around 9.4 million people are directly employed due to this trade, and indirectly we can count as many as 60 million jobs on both sides of the Atlantic. The EU-US trade and investment relationship remains the strongest despite the economic challenges that are related to the COVID-19 pandemic and the later inflation. And the transatlantic trade has reached an all-time high of 1.2 trillion euros in 2021, which is surpassing pre-pandemic levels by more than 10%. This United States remains the EU's largest member on trending partner in services, and the bilateral trades in services have reached a record of in 2021 and accounted for more than 500 billion euro. The size of the trade in services and goods between the US and the European Union is matched by the mutual investments, which are some of the biggest in the world and are a potential driver of economic and transatlantic relationships. The total of the US investment in the EU is 4 times higher than the Asia-Pacific region, and so the EU foreign direct investment in the EU is also 10 times the amount of the EU investment in India and China altogether. However, we have to take a look into the future and take into account that the arrival of the new administration, which has a more protectionist nature, which has also toyed with the fact that they may introduce some tariffs into trade, can also change this picture. And so we still need to reinforce the resilience of the European food chain. Therefore, we have to continue investing in these projects like be resilient in order to focus on our strategic autonomy. So in this sense, the evolution of the EU agri-food exports to the US, we are one of the main partners in this agricultural trade. In 2022, the European exports of agri-food products to the United States reached a value of 29.11 million euros, which is accounted for almost 13% of the total agri-food trade and 0.7% of the total exports, which is making the US the second largest destination for European food and beverage exports. The main exports that come from the European Union to the US includes high-value products like wines, spirits, beer, chocolate, cheese, olive oil, fruits, and vegetable preparations. And meanwhile, the European Union is also a key market for a number of US commodities like nuts, especially almonds, walnuts, and pistachios, soybeans, animal feed, wheat, wines, spirits, fruits, and spices. In 2022, the United States was the fourth country of origin of European imports of agri-food products, which is accounting for more than 7% of the share, which amounted to 12,279 million euros that year. So amongst the agri-food priorities for the European Union in this trading relationship with the United States are securing an enhanced access to the market for products like dairy, processed meat products, sugar, confectionery, chocolate, and olive oil, as well as ensuring a high standard of sanitary and phytosanitary requirements that adhere to, and protecting the geographical indications for important EU products. We have to take into account whenever we're looking at the evolution of the agri-food exports from the European Union to the United States, that some trends, some market trends in the United States really help out the imports from the European Union. For once, the United States and American consumers really value that the food comes from its traditional food source. That means that loads of products, of agri-food products that are produced in the European Union that have a traditional element to them or have a geographical indicator that protects them are really valued, and consumers in the US are willing to pay a high premium for them. So that really is a factor that we need to continue working on to have this getaway into the US market. We can see here the breakdown of the agri-food trade between the European Union and the United States, the 10-year evolution between 2012 and 2022. We can see that the largest share is wine, beverages, and food preparations, which is then followed as well by animal products, some fruit, vegetable, and olive oil, and arable crops and plant-based products. And these smaller shares are for coffee, tea, cocoa, and spices, as well as non-edible. However, what really sticks out in this breakdown of the trade between the European Union and the United States is that the balance is net positive for the European Union. So it is something that we need to continue working on, because it's really giving a gateway for our trade and our agri and our food and beverage products. You can see here some practical information if you want to start exporting to the United States. If you need any of these links, please don't hesitate to reach to us, and we will provide them for you so that you can really have this information at your fingertips, as well as some trade shows and events that may be a good exposure for your products. This will be available in all the countries that we're going to be studying in this webinar. So feel free to reach out, and we will give all this information to you. We're switching now to Canada, up north of the United States. It is one of the largest countries in the world. However, the geographical extension and the climatic conditions makes the population is largely concentrated in their southern border. They have around 39 million inhabitants, and the languages are mainly English and French, which are also an important thing to keep in mind whenever the some European importers are willing to work with them. They have 10 provinces and 3 territories. They also are a federal composition, and they use the Canadian dollar, which makes €1 for 1.4-ish Canadian dollars. The vast majority of Canadians, as I said, are positioned in this continuous band of approximately 300 kilometers in the southern border. That means up the north of the United States. The most populated province is Ontario, which is followed then by Quebec and British Columbia. And the main ports are Vancouver, Montreal, Prince Rupert, Halifax, and St. John. The main airports that we have to take into account are the Toronto Pearson, Vancouver International, and the Hamilton International one. They are a very developed and strong economy. The GDP is over 2.13 thousand million of US dollars in 2022. The GDP growth is at 3.4%, and the GDP per capita is verging the 55,000 US dollars per inhabitant. The sectoral distribution, as well as it is an advanced economy, is verging the 70% in services, almost 30% in industry, and 2.2% in agriculture. Great picture of Canada and its position in world trade. We have to take into account that Canada is a country with great openness to foreign trade. It's ranked among the top exporting countries in the world, and it represents around 67% of the country's GDP, according to the World Bank data. We can see here in this figure that the world's largest trades of goods in 2022, Canada has a 2% share, which means that they are the 11th largest exporter of goods in the world and the 14th largest importer, which means that they have a 2% share of the world imports. Product-wise, they are mainly exporting petroleum products, motor cars and other vehicles, gold and petroleum gas, and they are importing as well mainly vehicles, auto parts and accessories in this industry, petroleum oils and telephones. The trade relations between the European Union and Canada are amongst the largest traders in the world. They're both on goods and services. The European Union is Canada's third largest trading partner after the United States and China. So we have here a very good positioning for European goods. On the 21st of September in 2017, the EU-Canada Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, known as CETA, was provisionally entered into force, which is a modern and progressive trade agreement that offers EU firms more and better business opportunities in Canada, supports some jobs in Europe, and protects consumers and the environment in allows entrepreneurs and businesses of all sizes to benefit from its provided improved market access opportunities. The European goods exports into Canada have increased by 47% during the first 5 years of this provisional application, where the main gains were registered in cases of manufactured products, chemicals, as well as food and animal products. The bilateral trade in goods has increased by 53% between 2017 and 2022, while the EU and Canada trade service have increased by 47%, which means that they are outperforming other extra EU trade. The value of this trade in goods between the European Union and Canada was around 77.1 billion euros in 2022, and the top two product categories that the EU and Canada export are machinery and chemical and pharmaceutical products. The trade in services between the two have amounted for 31.1 billion euros in 2022, and the European Union has a positive trade balance with Canada, both in goods and services, which means that we have a benefit of around 17.7 billion euros in goods and 3.8 billion in services as well. As to the agri-food exports from the European Union to Canada, we have to take into account that Canada is one of the EU's top partners in agricultural trade. In 2022, the European exports of agri-food products into Canada have reached a value of over 4.49 million euros, which accounts for a 2.1% of the total agri-food trade coming from the European Union, which makes Canada the 9th largest destination for European food and beverages. The top exported products from the EU into Canada are alcoholic beverages, especially wines, spirits and beer, and other products are including chocolate, sugar and confectionery, cereal preparations, and cheese. Meanwhile, Canada is the major supplier of wheat into the European Union. It is also important supplier of soybeans, oilseeds, especially rapeseed, and as well as some fruit and vegetables like beans, lentils, and peas. In 2022, Canada was as well the 17th country of origin of European inputs of agri-food products, which means 1.7% of the share, which amounts to almost 3 million euros a year. 3,000 million euros a year. Within the CETA, we have some benefits that are impacted the agri-food experts, which is in the first one is the elimination of duties and tariff lines. This has eliminated duties for almost 92% of all the agricultural tariff lines. The defense of the EU geographical indication is also allowed within this trade agreement, which means that 143 European products have this, with the status of these geographical indications, can be sold in Canada and gives them a similar level of protection from the imitation as the EU law does. And thirdly, we have to take into account that this has improved a more secure access for European companies into the Canadian service market. And here we have the balance and the breakdown of the agri-food trade between the European Union and Canada over the last 10 years. We can see as well that the main exports are wine, followed by animal products, some fruit, vegetable, and olive oil, and arable crops and plant-based products. The coffee, tea, cocoa, and spices, and as well as non-edible products are the smallest shares of all. And we can also see that the balance is net positive for the European Union. I reiterate, we have all these links that you can access. If you want more information on them, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're now traveling into China. China is the second largest country in the world. They have over a billion, over 1,000 million in population. They have very different official languages such as Mandarin, Cantonese, Shanghainese, etc., like Taiwanese, etc., which have also to be taken into account whenever we are dealing in business with Chinese companies. They have 23 provinces, 5 autonomous regions, and 4 municipalities. They use the Chinese yuan, and 1 euro is around 7.55 yuan. The main business areas are especially located in the eastern half of the country, especially in the urban areas like Shanghai, Beijing, Chongqing, Guangdong, Tianjin, and Shenzhen. The main ports are the port of Shanghai, Shenzhen, as well as Ningbo, Sousan, and Guangzhou. And the main airports are, of course, the Shanghai International Airport, the Guangzhou Baiyong International Airport, Shenzhen Spao International Airport, and Beijing Capital International Airport. They also have one of the strongest GDPs in the world, with over 17 billion US dollars in 2022, and the GDP growth is at 3%. The GDP per capita is over small in comparison to the previous countries that we have analyzed, with with around 12,000 US dollar per capita. And as well, the services have over 50% of the GDP distribution, but we really need to take into account that almost 40% of all the GDP is in the industry and around 10% into agriculture. Over the past few years, China has become the world's largest exporter and ranking second in the largest importers. Even though they have strict policies, the country is fairly open to foreign trade, which this represents around 37% of the country's GDP. The country and the trade have become increasingly important, especially because it's part of the Chinese overall economy, and they have been using it as a significant tool for modernization. This figure shows the world's largest trade, that China is the world's largest trader of goods, and they have a share of 15% of the exports in the world of goods. Closely followed by the United States, as we have already stated. And it is the second largest importer in the world with 11% of the world's share. The European Union and China, two of the world's largest trading partners, this bilateral trade accounts for over a third of the world's trade. The EU and China have are trading goods for over 800 billion euros annually with each other. In 2022, China was the third largest partner for the EU, exports in goods with a share of 9% and for goods with around 21%. In terms of goods, the EU is currently trade deficit with China, especially because there's a trade deficit that has been increased during the pandemic years, which has been driven primarily by a strong rise in its in the EU inputs from China with over 83%. However, the strong rise in the inputs from China in the past years is especially due to the deterioration of the EU's terms of trade, especially because volumes rose only by 34%, meaning that all prices from the EU inputs from China rose considerably, which is more than the actual quantities of them. On the service side, the EU is currently at trade surplus with China. The European Union is also committed to increasing the trade relations with this country. They have been concluding the principle of the negotiations of the Comprehensive Agreement on Investment, which is known as the CAI, which is an agreement that grants the EU investors a greater level of access to the Chinese market. This hasn't been ratified, but it is the discussion regarding this topic, especially because they want to enhance the gateway between the EU and China. There's also a number of dialogues, like the annual EU-China summits, which is at the presidential level, the EU-China high-level economic and trade dialogue, which is at a vice president level, the Joint Committee on Trade, the Trade Investment Policy Dialogue, as well the Economic and Trade Working Group. As for agri-food exports into China, China is a net importer of agri-food products. The EU exports have dropped relatively, which is an 8% decrease on the year-to-year basis. This is the largest decrease of all EU trade partners. This decline has been massive for the quantities of pigment exported, which has dropped by 40%, leading to a drop in value. However, the pigment is still the largest exported commodity to China in value now, which is close to cereal preparations and milling products. The EU trade balance with China remains positive, which is resulting from the exports of higher value meat, dairy, and alcohol products. Meanwhile, China is a major supplier to the European market of products like vegetables, especially fresh, chilled, and dried, animal fats, tropical fruits, both fresh and dried, nuts, and spices. In 2022, China was the fifth country of origin of European imports on agri-food products, importing 5.7% of the share, which is amounted to almost 9,000 million euros in that year. There's an agreement protecting the geographical indication, which is an important part of this trade, with both sides establishing lists of 100 products with geographical indication, which includes a number of our products that we will be the first to benefit from any future agreements. As for the evolution of the agri-food trade with China over the scope of 10 years, we can see a difference if we compare it to the previous countries. The largest share is in animal products, followed by arable crops and non-based products. Wine is not the main category, which is a change of trend. And fruit, vegetables, and olive oil, as well as coffee, tea, and spices are very small shares of all. So although in a surplus, the balance is decreasing for the European part, so it is needed to reactivate the exports into the Chinese market. Changing now into Japan, which has over 125,000 in population, million in population. The main language is Japanese, and they are divided in 47 prefectures. They use the Japanese yen, which a euro makes around 148.48 yens. The primary and secondary regions of high populations and density lie on the coast. 1/3 of the total population of the country resides in and around Tokyo on the central plain. which is known as the Kanto Plain. The main ports are the port of Kobe, Nagoya, Tokyo, and Osaka. And the main airports are the Narita International Airport, Haneda, and Kansai International Airport. They're also a very strong economy worldwide with a GDP that surpasses the 4 million in 2022, although the GDP growth is more stagnant than the previous countries have been analyzed. The GDP per capita is around $34,000 US, and they are also a tertiary economy with a strong focus on services, although industry still makes around 29% of the share. The Japanese positioning in world trade is an essential part of the Japanese economy, although the country is not fully open and has extensive non-tariff barriers, especially within the agricultural sector. Trade accounts for 37% of the country's GDP. These figures show their positioning in the both exports and inputs worldwide. Japan makes around 3% of the exports share in the world, which means that they are the 5th largest, and they are the 4th largest importer of goods as well. They mainly export motor vehicles. They are the 2nd exporter of cars at a global level. They also export machinery and electronic equipment. And the country's main imports include fuels, petroleum oils, and distillation products. The EU trade relations with Japan are very strong, as Japan is the European Union's 2nd biggest trading partner in Asia after China. Together, the trade between the European Union and Japan accounts for about a quarter of the world's GDP. And the traditional trade relationship between the European Union and Japan used to be characterized by big trade surpluses in favor of Japan. From 2009 to 2019, these figures became more balanced as the European Union's trading deficit with Japan has decreased from 18 billion in 2009 to reach a surplus of 82 million in 2021. The EU exports to Japan reached the highest level in 2022, and they are dominated by chemicals, motor vehicles, machinery, optical and medical instruments, food, and drinks. And meanwhile, the EU imports from Japan also have peaked, and they are dominated by machinery, motor vehicles, chemicals, optical and medical instruments, and plastics. There are 6 important agreements that have been concluded between the EU and Japan, like the Economic Partnership Agreement and the Strategic Partnership Agreement, the EU-Japan Mutual Recognition Agreement, the Agreement of Cooperation on Anti-Competitive Activities, the Science and Technology Agreement, as well as the Agreement on Cooperation and Mutual Administrative Assistance on Customs Matters. As for the evolution of the agri-food exports between the European Union and Japan, Japan has been a long-term trade partner, especially has been very consistent in increasing its inputs from European countries. The exports have reached a value of over 8,000 million euros, which accounts for 3.7% of the total agri-food trade coming out of the European Union. Japan was the 5th most popular destination of our products by value. We have exported over 16 times more agri-food products by value to Japan than Japan to the EU in 2022. And the European Union is the 4th biggest exporter of meat and meat preparations to Japan by value, just after China, Australia, the United States. And we are also the main exporter of wine into Japan. Apart from cigars and cigarettes, pig meat is still the greatest overreaching category within Japan's agri-food imports from the EU, with a market share of over 18%. And this has been followed by wine and wine-based products, which account for 13% of the share, and dairy, which are about 9% of all EU exports into the country. The food and beverage market is largely import-based, which has a very significant impact in Japan's trade balance deficit with the EU. And there are several sectors that are particularly attractive for EU exporters, like meat, wine, olive oil, and cheese. As we can see here, we really rarely input agri-food products from Japan, and all categories are consistently growing, as well as our balance is in a growing surplus. We're now delving into Singapore, which is a smaller country in relative terms, with over 5 million inhabitants. They mostly use English as well as Mandarin, Malay, and Tamil. They also use other Chinese dialects, and they don't have any administrative divisions because the country is a very small and concentrated area. They use the Singapore dollar, which makes €1 $1.4. And most of the urbanization is along the southern coast, with relatively dense population clusters found in the central areas. The main port is the Port of Singapore, and the main airport is the Changi Airport. Although they have a relatively small population, their GDP is really really strong, with over $466 million. And the GDP is growing at a rate of 3.6%. The GDP per capita is also very high, with over $82,000. And they're also following the advanced economy sectoral distribution, with services making over 70% and industries around 26%. For their position in world trade, they are one of the most market-oriented and open economies in the world, also considered one of the easiest countries in which to do business. They are the largest trader of goods with data from the trade map. They are the 5th largest exporter of goods and the 16th largest importer. They are mainly importing machinery, transport equipment, and crude petroleum, and they are depending on especially shipments and their status as a business hub. So, although electronics remains one of the most important manufacturing sectors, they have become one of the main choices for regional headquarters for technology firms, especially financial technology. They have really bloomed in this sector in the past years. Singapore is a member of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, which is the second largest commercial partner in the EU. The bilateral trade and investment negotiations have begun in 2010, being the 22nd largest trade partners with the EU. The agreements with Singapore, the first to have been completed between the EU and a Southeast Asian country, which are representing a stepping stone to greater engagement with this region. These trade and investment protection agreements were signed in 2018, and they are negotiating now a digital trade agreement. They are the second largest trading partner in Asia, and the EU has a sizable positive effect in their balance of trade goods with Singapore. They are also a major destination for our investments in Asia, the second largest Asian investor of the EU after Japan. The bilateral foreign direct investment stock between the EU and Singapore has roughly made 434 billion euros, which has been expanded rapidly in the preceding years. As for the evolution of the agri-food export, Singapore has a minor agricultural economy activity and is reliant especially on imports, especially in unprocessed products. It's therefore a value of food inputs that is substantially outweighing their exports, which is making their domestic market very dependent. Singapore is the 5th biggest export market in Asia for EU food and beverages, with annual exports coming to the EU with over 2.2 billion, which accounts for 1% of the total of the EU 27 agri-food trade. For this past, Singapore occupies the 67th position in origin of European inputs of food and beverages, which is not even accounted for 0.1% of the total. The major exports from the EU to Singapore were especially in terms of value, spirits and liqueurs, wine and wine-based products, and dairy products. Within this framework of the free trade agreement, they are removing custom duties and bureaucracy. So this is improving the trade in key goods like electronics, food products, and pharmaceuticals, which is aiming to facilitate these exports of animal origin products, as well as the protection of geographical indications for wine, spirits, certain agricultural products, and this has enhanced the protection with the consumers' recognition of the authentic quality of our agri-food exports. As you can see again, the main category is wine, beverages, and food preparations, followed by animal products. The balance is as well in a surplus, which is growing over time. We're now focusing on South Korea, which has over 51 million inhabitants that speak mainly Korean and English. Their administrative divisions are 9 provinces, 6 metropolitan cities, 1 special city, which is Seoul, and 1 special self-governing city, which is Sejong. They use the South Korean won. €1 makes around 1,404,000 Korean wons, and the country's population is primarily concentrated in the lowland areas, which is the Jeon province in the northwest, which is surrounded by the capital of Seoul and contains the port of Incheon, and is the most densely populated province. In the northeast is the least populated. The main ports are Busan, Incheon, Donghai, and Masan, and the main airports are Gimpo, Incheon International Airport, Gimhae, and Jeju International. The GDP is also very strong in the world positioning. They have over a billion in US dollars, and the GDP is growing at a rate of 2.6%. The GDP per capita is around $32,000 US, and they are also mainly focusing on services and industry. The share for agriculture is only making up around 2% of the share. Their position in the world trade, they are one of the most important factors of the South Korean economic success. The trade is accounted for over 80% of the country's GDP. They have very heavily integrated into the international trade and finance markets, and so they're highly vulnerable to external influences, especially from China, which is their main trading partner. In the figures, you can see where South Korea sits at the exports and imports level in the world. They are the 7th largest exporter, which makes around a 3% share of the total global trade in good terms, and the 9th largest importer, which makes around, again, a 3% share. The country is exporting mainly electric and electronic equipment, machinery, nuclear reactors, boilers, vehicles, and the main inputs are electrical and electronic equipment, mineral fuels, oils, and distillation products. South Korea is the European Union's 9th largest export destination of goods, whereas the EU is Korea's 3rd largest export market. So they have the EU-Korea Free Trade Agreement has entered into force in 2011, which has made the bilateral trade expand remarkably. There are some facts on this trade, which remains highly concentrated within the industrial sector, which is representing over 95% of the total bilateral trade. And the agricultural products have gradually increased in these decades since this agreement has entered into force. The trading services has remained concentrated on a handful of sectors, especially transport, royalties, and license fees, and telecommunications, computer, and information services. And the EU remains South Korea's bigger foreign direct investment ahead of Japan and the US, which are some of South Korea's traditional allies. As for the evolution of the agri-food exports to South Korea, given the limited agricultural production in the country, it's not surprising that the EU has a strong trade balance. The country is a net importer of agri-food products as a whole. The value of these imports coming from the EU has increased fairly steadily, especially since 2009. They are the 10th most important destination for agri-food exports, and they account for 2% of the total EU 27 agri-food exports. South Korea is also exporting to the EU a fraction of that. They are our 52nd net supplier, which is over 0.2% share of the total EU imports. The EU mainly exports pork, spirits and wines, dairy products, starches, chocolate, sugar, confectionery, and other processed agricultural goods. And in turn, we import wheat products, vegetable, fruits, soup, sauces, coffees, and tea. The European Commission and the Republic of Korea have signed an administrative agreement to cooperate on the electronic health certification and towards the harmonization of such certificates for exports of agricultural products from the EU coming to South Korea. The arrangement wants to be implemented and gives an effect to commitment undertaken between the EU and Korea, bilateral FTA, as well as the WTO. This establishes a new electronic certification exchange system for bilateral trade of agricultural products, and this will be a mutually beneficial tool which will enable EU exporters to reduce their administrative burden and increase Korean consumers' trust. Once this arrangement is officialized, the technical preparations will begin. We can see here as well the evolution of agri-food trade with South Korea coming from the EU, where animal products are taking the lead in the share, followed by wine, beverages, and food preparations. The balance is on a surplus to the EU and is steadily growing. We're now delving into Thailand, which has over 71 million inhabitants that mainly speak Thai and Burmese. They have 76 provinces and 1 municipality. They use the Thai baht as their currency, and the rate exchange equates to €1 to 37 Thai. The highest population density is found in and around Bangkok, which is the capital, and the significant population clusters are found throughout large parts of the country, especially north and northeast of Bangkok in the southern region of the country. The main ports are the Lam Chambak port, the Bangkok port, and the Chiang Saen port, and the main airport is the Surami International Port. The GDP is verging $495 million US dollars, with a GDP growth of over 2.6%, and the GDP per capita is very low. This is the lowest one that we have looked at in these snapshots, which is over $6,000 US dollars. There are a service in economy with 61% of the GDP share coming from this sector, but agriculture is staying at around 8.6 rate. It's located between two of the largest markets in the world, which are China and India, and so they are a central member of the Asian and have large export-oriented economy, which is pursuing free trade agreements with and foreign trade appeals to Thailand. This is a key element for the country's future economic progress. They are an export-dependent country, and roughly 2/3 of the GDP comes from international trade. They are sitting at the 28th largest exporter in the world and the 22nd largest importer of goods. The trade relations with the EU and Thailand. Thailand is the 4th largest trade partner after China, Japan, and the US. For Thailand, which accounts for 7.5% of Thailand's country's trade. As per the European part, Thailand is our 27th largest trade partner in the world. In 2020, the total bilateral trade has amounted to 29 billion euros. Thailand has exported goods that are worth over 15.1 billion euros to the EU, and key exports are machinery, electronics, transport equipment, miscellaneous manufactured articles, as well as food products. And the EU has exported especially machinery, transport equipment, chemicals, and so related products, as well as manufactured goods. Thailand is one of the most important destinations of the European investment within the Asian countries, and the EU is the second largest investor in Thailand after Japan. Thailand and the EU have negotiated a partnership and cooperation agreement, which provides a comprehensive framework for EU and Thailand relations and will open up wide opportunities to develop cooperation. The overall EU approach to bilateral relations with Thailand is set in the Council conclusions of 2019. They are also announcing the relaunch of negotiation for an FTA. As for the evolution of the EU agri-food exports, in recent data, Thailand is placed as the 4th largest agri-food exporter in Asia after China, Indonesia, and India. And Europe is exporting products to Thailand with over 1.23 million euros, which accounts on 0.5% of the total agri-food trade, making Thailand the 32nd destination of European food and beverage products. The main exports are including dairy products, followed by cereal preparation and milling products. the EU has a trade deficit in relation to Thailand, especially because they are on a negative balance of 1.1 million euros. This free trade agreement that is being negotiation wants to boost the trade investments and address a wide range of issues like market access for goods, services, investment in government procurement, swift and effective sanitary and phytosanitary procedures, as well as the protection of intellectual property rights, which really relates to the geographical indications and their protection in this country. As for the balance, we can see here there is a deficit balance for the European Union, and that is a balance that is growing negatively for the EU. The main imports are arable crops and plant-based products, as well as fruit, vegetables, and olive oil, followed by animal products, as well as non-edible products. So this concludes our study of these country snapshots of the main target countries within the BioResilient network. Of course, all the links and the information will be available to you. If you want to have them, please don't hesitate to contact us, and we will send to you all this information. Taking into account the importance of EU trade, as well as the impact of resilience within our agri-food chains, we have invited today our colleague Pablo from Agri-Food Masi, which will give you some ideas from other projects that can help you to integrate better this internationalization aspect of resilience into your value chains. So please, Pablo, you can go ahead and tell us about this interesting project.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very interesting presentation. I will try and share my screen. I think, can you see it now?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm here to present the Brilian project and how we are just working towards a sustainable rural bioeconomy, or the deployment of bioeconomy in the European Union. I will try and be as short as I can. So, so who we are? Well, first, the project lead is Circe from Spain. We are 3 small and medium enterprises. We are mainly allocated in the countries where the pilots are. So that is Italy, Spain, and Denmark. But we also have partners in Belgium, Czech Republic, and Greece. We are large companies, but also, as I said, small and medium sized companies, research and technical organizations and technology organizations, and 4 clusters and associations. Brilian aims to support the adoption of sustainable and cooperative business models in rural areas in the 3 pilots located, as I said, in Italy, Spain, and Denmark. The feedstocks that we are working with are cardoon, safflower, and sunflower. Those are in Italy, potato rejections and processed water in Spain, and rapeseed in Denmark. These sustainable business models that we are researching and that we are trying to implement encompass a wide range of high-value added byproducts, such as, well, vegan protein, additives for bioadhesives, biolubricants, biostimulants, among others. Brilian will minimize environmental negative potentials by setting up and optimizing these 10 bio-based value chains. Upcycling is a core strategy for Brilian, with pilots actively upcycling agricultural byproducts into high-value bio-based products, not only minimizing waste, but also diversifying the income streams for the primary producers. Well, where does Brilian come from? So Brilian, well, currently the rural areas cover approximately 80% of the European Union's territory, so they play a key role in the improving the development of the sustainable bio-based value chains. The Brilian's motivation is to, well, uphold those bio-based value chains, because they have become, as we have seen in previous years, they have become crucial to contribute to cope with the upcoming challenges in the European Union, but also in the European Union, but worldwide. And we also want to ensure a just transition and a fair share of benefits among the different actors in these bio-based value chains. And we also want to align with the Common Agricultural Policy, but also while addressing the Green Deal and the bioeconomy strategy objectives. Brilian's objective is to exploit these existing opportunities to boost the bioeconomy deployment, such as the need for raw materials, for biocommodities, and the interesting properties that these bioproducts show. And how we pretend to do it, or how we're doing it. So we are implementing a multi-actor approach. We will see a graphic coming up for the validation of a group of actions for the bioinnovation, both at macro and a micro level, such as forging reverse rural biocommunities, second, achieving circularity and sustainability, the integration of short supply chains, and the production of these value-added byproducts. This is the graphic I was referring to before. It just gives a little bit more of a visual on the project's objective and outcome. So, yeah, what are the impacts of Brilian? At a local level, we are recovering this marginal on abandoned lands through regenerative agricultural practices, engaging at least, right now there are 8 farmers. But we also have an advisory board of farmers composed by 20 farmers and primary producers, clusters and associations, 20 agro-industries and industrial players, and 20 research centers, not only coming from the countries where we have the pilot plants, but also we have tried and embrace all of the participants that want to participate, all the people that want to participate, even if they are not from the countries where we have pilot plants. We also have published our first policy bulletin that will be especially important for those who are part of the advisory board of farmers and the participants in the project, and everybody that is interested in these bio-based value chains. Well, and then as you mentioned, why is it important to also engage with other countries that are not the ones that we have or that we have pilot plants in? So we aim to have some replication potential across Europe. So apart from having research in the feedstock in the countries where we have pilot plants, Spain, Italy, and Denmark, which are crops that are widely cultivated across Europe, kadum, safflower, sunflower, potato, and rapeseed. We also expand this replicability in the Center-East European countries, such as Czech Republic, Romania, Hungary. We have analyzed key crops in these countries for the potential to integrate with our project's circular business models. And this way we can develop tailored strategies for these countries on how they could adapt to our circular bio-based business model, fostering this scalability and also this cross-border impact. We also aim to build a sort of blueprint for replication, so a framework for the European-wide adaptation of these business models, which include knowledge sharing, resource mapping, as I mentioned, and also capacity building, because it's very important for us that everybody understands what we're doing, and also to take into account those of the knowledge of those people that are working in the field. Replicability, as I said, is critical and is crucial for Brilian, because it ensures the project solutions can be used or can have a widespread and long-term impact. While Brilian pilots are located, as I said, in these 3 countries, they each have distinct rural and agricultural contexts. So we aim to ensure the replicability of its cooperative business models, extending benefits like income diversification for farmers and also sustainability practices into other regions. We pretend, or we aim to also adapt the solutions to varied ecological, economic, and even cultural conditions. We do that by developing this framework I was speaking about before. So empowering these local farmers, cooperatives, policymakers, and other stakeholders to implement these sustainable business models as efficiently as they can. And that would be it. Thank you very much for listening to me. I will stop. Well, you have my email there, so any other question that you may have or any other quest of interest, we also have a web page and a social media that you can consult. So yeah, I will stop sharing right now.
Thank you, Pablo. It looks like a very interesting project. We will make sure to also reach out to the rest of our network so that they can delve into the project and see if they can fit in it.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you. We will make sure to make some diffusion and publishments of these webinars as well, so that people can look into the Brilian project as well as the Brilian network. So thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us as well. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. This finishes the second webinar of the webinar cycle on international market trends within the Brilian network. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.